When you are delving deep into a castle or in the damp recesses of a long-forgotten cavern, the last thing you want to hear is an echoey laughter. GameMasters here, and I want to highlight a monster found in the 5th edition monster manual, the Flameskull. These things are created when, it breaks down like this. I'm a bad guy, right? I'm into necromancy and am hungry for power, and I suspect that all other wizards and magic casters are just out for my knowledge. So I gotta go out and do them in before they come at me. Or I'll hire someone to do them in. Then I'll take their remains, usually just the head, and perform some pretty sick rituals with it. And when complete, the skull will burst into a green flame, and this skull will now do my bidding. From guarding a treasure to, well, really anything else I may ask of it. Why use the remains of a wizard? Well, the Flameskull can cast magic. Now, it won't fully recall what it was in life, but in its undead transformation, it does recall every single spell it had access to. And what's more, it is not bound to somatic or material components to cast those spells. It can simply just cast them. Obviously, the more powerful the magic user, the more powerful the Flameskull, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. These things are eternally bound to the individual that created it, following instructions to a T. It would be beneficial to the creator to provide very specific instructions just to ensure that the Flameskull performs the task properly. They remain bathed in green flames, which gives off a glowing light, and they can use these flames as weapons, even spraying fiery rays from their eye sockets. The Flameskull, if bashed and broken apart, will reform from the fragments, unless it's splashed with holy water, or if dispel magic or remove curse is cast upon it. If the individual that created the Flameskull is ever dispatched, then the skull will simply roam around endlessly with no task to perform. It does not require air, food, sleep, and it doesn't need to drink. Now, before we jump into the Flameskull's stat block, I'd love to ask that if you're enjoying this video, hit that like button. It helps give me advantage with the YouTube algorithm, and, well, I thank you. The Flameskull is considered to be a tiny undead. Well, unless the magic user was like crafted from a dragon or like a giant. I suppose that might impact its size. And that makes me wonder, actually no, you know what, we'll return to that in a moment when we talk about the more power the magic user, the more powerful the Flameskull. We'll get to that. But for this example, I want to take a look at the base stats that are shown here in the monster manual. It has an armor class of 13, has a flying speed of 40 feet, a strength of 1, I mean, it's a skull, dexterity is 17, constitution is 14, intelligence is 16, wisdom is 10, and charisma is 11. It has damage resistance against lightning, necrotic, and piercing weapons, and has damage immunity from cold, fire, and poison, and condition immunity from being charmed, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned. It has dark vision and is a challenge rating of 4. For abilities, the Flameskull has illumination. In essence, this thing can increase or decrease how bright it is. It has magic resistance, giving it advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. Rejuvenation. So we mentioned that it has the ability to reform if it's shattered or destroyed, and unless it's splashed with holy water or has had dispel magic or remove curse on it, it's going to regain its hit points, all of its hit points, in 1 hour. Spell casting. I'm going to return to this one in a moment. This is what I was alluding to earlier. For actions, it has multi-attack, which it will make use of Fire Ray. This is the flame that it can pour forth from its eye sockets, and that's going to end up doing 3d6 fire damage. Okay, so spell casting. In the monster manual, the Flameskull is considered to be a 5th level spellcaster. Now, as mentioned, it does not require verbal or material components to cast spells. And it knows the following wizard spells: Mage Hand, a cantrip, Magic Missile and Shield, both 1st level spells, Blur and Flaming Sphere, those being 2nd level spells, and a 3rd level spell, Fireball. Now, the dragon that we talked about at the top of this video, being a potential Flameskull, I mean, why not? If I was powerful enough, why couldn't I transform the dragon's remains into somewhat of a larger Flameskull? be a bit more powerful. Now, this of course would alter the size category as well as the overall stats and the spell that it knew. Likewise, if I went after and dispatched, say, a cleric or an eldritch knight or hell, even another necromancer, the spells they knew in life would translate over to what the Flameskull would have access to. And what if I went with a pixie or a nymph and had a bunch of tiny little minuscule Flameskulls floating around? I'm highlighting some monsters to prepare for the release of the standalone copy of Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse that releases on May 17th. And while I've given a lot of coverage to it already, I have a lot more to cover, including some pretty interesting observations about monsters that we can actually play as, and monsters in general that don't exactly appear in that book. Well, such as the Flameskull, which is in the monster manual here. And if you'd like to see more of those videos, you can check out that massive playlist here. The big question is, what would happen if I attempted to do a ritual on the remains of a non-magic casting head? Would it just turn into a non-casting Flameskull, or would the skull just sit there and grin at me? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next our paths cross, may you not hear disembodied laughter as you move down the hall.